Welcome to this edition of the Your Weekly Dose of Nonprofit Podcast, the podcast that delivers actionable items you can implement at your organization right away. I'm your host, Ephraim Gopin of 1832 Communications. Today, I'm really happy to have with us a nonprofit management, fundraising, and marketing expert, Julie Edwards. Julie, how you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Let's introduce you to our listeners, watchers, and readers. A 25 plus year expert in media and marketing communications, Julie Edwards is a dynamic visionary executive with a demonstrated track record of increasing revenue, raising money, leading high performance teams, and motivating large groups of people to affect positive change. In 2010, she turned her expertise to the nonprofit sector, first as a development director and then an executive director for a regional selective admission animal welfare facility. During her tenure, she doubled the overall budget from $1.1 million to $2.4 million through directing growth of new and existing services, increased fundraising revenue by 255+%, and oversaw $600,000 in capital expansion projects. When not helping clients make the world a better place, Julie crafts chef-level vegetarian meals, works as an up-and-coming contemporary folk art painter, and loves on her two rescues, Charlie and Millie. In today's episode, we're going to discuss taking your fundraising to the next level. Let's dive right in. Julie, there are so many ways to fundraise, yet we've both seen nonprofits who are heavily dependent on one method, gala event or direct mail, for example. What are the potential pitfalls in putting all your eggs in one basket?
Well, that's probably pretty self-evident, but if that one thing fails for whatever reason, like if you are dependent on a gala and then there's a global pandemic of some sort, and you have to cancel it, or there's actually our local big venue that people use here where I live, the country club, their roof fell in. And so everybody that had their gala had to, so if there's things outside of your control. And so if something happens that you can't do, and then you put all your eggs in that basket, then your budget's shot for the year. Diversification of your fundraising portfolio, just like diversification of your stock portfolio for your retirement, is incredibly important. I was recently talking to someone on a strategy session, and they were a small nonprofit who relied upon their local county government for like 85% of their budget. And I was like, you got to do something about that, because if the government cuts their budget or slashes and they get cut, then that affects their mission. So, sometimes you have to start small and you only can do one thing, but as quickly as you can, you need to have a mix of events. Some events, events are not money makers. I'll tangent off and say that, because the time you put into them, they're usually more friend raisers than fundraisers. But, events, individual fundraising, major gift fundraising, monthly donors, grants, but, you need to have your pie spread out across multiple revenue streams, just so if something happens to one of them, it doesn't impact your budget as hard, which in turn impacts your mission, your availability to deliver your services.
Excellent answer. Totally agree. So if we're going to be talking fundraising, let's talk fundraising strategy. What does that strategy have to include in order for the implementation to be successful?
Okay, so this is the hill I will die upon, but I am a ginormous advocate of donor love, donor relations, stewardship. I was not really introduced to that concept till 2017 by Tom Ahern, and I went to a conference and he spoke about that, and I was like, oh, all the light bulbs went off, and it makes such sense, and it seems so simple on the surface, but for something so simple, it is shocking to me about how few nonprofits actually do it or do it well. I mean, there are still a ton of nonprofits out there who don't thank their donors at all, which causes my little fundraising heart to just hurt. So, anything you can do to increase your stewardship, it is so important, because it's not just about getting the gift. It's actually, that's more important than getting the gift, because that's how you retain your donors and help them give to you again and up their gift so that they, will give you more money, hopefully in the future. And I know it works, because at my former organization, the Humane Society I worked at, where I was development director and executive director, after I went to that conference, we started implementing stewardship and became with a really robust strategy, the most we could do. And that is what made the difference. I fully believe. And we took our fundraising within a 2 years from a little over 400,000 to over 1 million, like more than doubled it. And that was the main difference that we did was to implement a really robust stewardship strategy. And that included thanking as well as reporting back to the donors about what their impact was with that gift that they made.
Fantastic answer. Always important to have a gratitude attitude. Today's actionable item, segmenting a donor list. Please tell us 3 ways an organization should be segmenting their list and why doing so will take their fundraising to a whole new level.
So I'm going to be a little different about this, but of course, you need to separate between your current donors, whatever you define that as, which some people that's the past year, some people that's the past 18 months, 24 months, whatever makes sense to you. And some of that depends on the size of your donor database. And then your either live butts, side butts of people who haven't given, because when you're sending out an appeal or an ask, you want to be able to structure those messages a little differently. But then I would also say what you need to do on the back end, and this is sort of like, I guess, segment number 3, is when you are sending out an ask, it's important to remember, especially if you're doing it via email, that you take out those donors who've already given. So you're not consistently sending them a barrage of emails, especially if it's a day like, say, Giving Tuesday, where you may be sending multiple emails over a 24 to 72 hour period. As soon as those people give, if you can take them off the list so they're not continuing to get those emails, you just don't want to make people angry about, over emailing if they've given, because they're like, and then they'll get, I gave my gift, why didn't you get it? But that is an important thing as well. And of course, monthly givers are a whole different subset. If you have any type of a monthly giving program, those people also need to be stewarded in a totally different way, as do your first time donors. So those also need to be segmented out, and you need to have separate, stewardship campaigns, drip campaigns to address those donors.
Excellent. And certainly on that email one, that's an excellent point that you're making. So if we're going to be talking about marketing and fundraising, how should the two work together to increase donations and thus help increase impact in the community?
So this is a second hill I will die on. And it probably is because my background is in marketing. My degrees are in marketing communications, and I got into development. I learned all the things fundraising, but I mean, and again, this is something I see nonprofits not doing well again and again. The marketing teams and the development teams never converse, never talk to each other, never share information, but it is crucial that they work together. And not only that, but really marketing should support development, because marketing has to be over here telling the stories, telling the good, thanking the donors through social media, email, newsletters, whatever that they're doing. And that needs to funnel into and support what your development efforts, so that they're mirroring each other. And of course, any campaign you have, that needs to be communicated through marketing. But that messaging, the branding, all of the things that your organization, be it on a day-to-day basis or for a special campaign, it needs to be cohesive across your organization. And there is no way in my mind that marketing and fundraising can exist independently within an organization. They have to work together and be married up, and and support each other, because it's just that I don't know how you'd be successful otherwise, quite honestly.
I have 3 words for your answer. Yes, yes, yes. On your website, jedwardsconsulting.com, you talk about being passionate about, quote, making it rain for change. What does that mean? And how do you go about making that happen?
So that was actually a line I creatively borrowed, I don't say steal, from it was a CRM company. I can't remember which one it is now, so I don't want to talk out of turn. I think I know, but I don't want to say. But I thought it was so clever. But of course, making it rain is a colloquialism slang for creating lots of money. And so making it rain for change obviously is creating a lot of money for nonprofits or for charity to to help their mission to forward change in the world on whatever their mission basis is. So my wheelhouse sort of is, I'm a fixer. I like to fix things, and I like to go in and fix things and get out. And I figured out after several months now of doing consulting work that, sort of my sweet spot is helping, because this is what I did at the organization I was at. So I have lived it and breathed it and done it successfully, is to go in and help smaller to mid-sized nonprofits that maybe don't have the team or the time, but have enough budget to go to the next level. So maybe they're, it's just an ED who doesn't have a DD and can't do it all. So they need that help with their fundraising strategy. Maybe it's, they have a DD, but they're not well versed in, all the things fundraising and they need some support. Or maybe it's a special campaign they need support for, or a stewardship strategy. But, I know because I was a DD and then an ED and did not know what I was doing at first about fundraising and did not have team members at first and was doing all the things that support is so crucial. And I think where, again, a lot of nonprofits miss the boat, is they have this mindset of scarcity and they don't want to spend the money. But there are affordable consultants and there are great people out there who do great work, and you do have to screen them and, and do the right things. But, sometimes you can spend a little bit of money and make a lot in return. For example, I had a client at the holidays and I wrote 3 emails for them for less than $500 and they made $12,000 off of those 3 emails. So, $500 may sound like a lot of money to a lot of nonprofits, depending on where you are in the world, but that's a great return on your investment. So, you need to think about that when you're thinking like, this may cost me $2,000 or $3,000, but if I make $10, $12, $15, $20,000 off of hiring this consultant, or hiring this help, it's totally worth it. And again, you can't always promise that. And there's a lot of things that go into that relationship between consultants and nonprofits. But, it's worth considering. It's worth considering going, getting the help, especially if it's not your wheelhouse, you're not a copywriter, you're not a great strategist, whatever, to help you to, increase your fundraising, because again, it only helps your mission at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Make it rain for change. I love that. It's brilliant. The lightning round. Let's learn more about you. What got you started on your nonprofit career path?
Okay, so I'm going to be 100% honest here. I actually did work earlier in my career for a hospital in their public relations department. Of course, hospitals are nonprofits, but a totally different, or some hospitals are. This was a nonprofit hospital, but that's a totally different animal. But the year I turned 40, which was 2009, I lost my job that year in January due to the recession that happened the year before. And I was basically unemployed all that year. I did consulting work that year as well. And at the end of that year, and I won't go into the detail of it because it'll take too long to explain, but through lots of coincidences and things just sort of working out, I found out about this job at the Humane Society, and they were looking for somebody to do their development and marketing, and they had never had that position before. So I applied and got the job, started there actually February 1 of 2010. So it would have been, 11 years a few days ago. And again, I had all the marketing expertise, but I didn't know a whole lot about fundraising. I had done some fundraising, event fundraising with my church, but not the same. But I learned, and it became a passion for me because I've told everybody over the years that it seemed to be a great merge of my personal and professional skills, because I had the marketing skills and the fundraising skills. And I've always been, I guess, a do-gooder. Like, if you know anything about the Enneagram, I'm a type 2 Enneagram, the helper. So, I really do have a passion about making a difference in the world, and like, again, helping these smaller mid-sized nonprofits become better, do more, and really help them make a change and make a difference.
Fantastic. So, given your expertise and years of experience in the sector, if you could shake up one thing in the nonprofit world, what would it be?
Okay, can I say 2 things? I'm going to be scandalous here. Number one thing I'm going to say is, and I'm a big Dan Pelota fan, and if you don't know who he is, you should go look up his TED Talk on rethinking the way people approach nonprofits. But again, it goes back to that mindset of scarcity, that nonprofits need to have a different mindset. You are a business. You are a business, and you need to operate like a business. And that is something that I preach all the time. But you're a business with a heart. And again, I won't go into all the detail of that, but we need to change the way we think about nonprofits, and because of all the years, I think he has a stat that nonprofits have been, a thing. The income to them has not really changed, even though we're doing all these different things, which is as relation to gross national product, which is ridiculous, because they fill so many gaps, and that has to change. The other thing I would change, and please don't hate me, people, if you're listening, is I have come to realize that the structure of a board overseeing a nonprofit is not a great structure. These are people, well-meaning, well-intended professionals who come into an organization to help them out, but they know nothing about the field, nothing about the mission, nothing about the history, nothing about the people there. And they learn, but it's and then they roll off a few years later. So then you get a whole new boss and a whole new team of people coming in. And it's not sustainable. And I've seen so many great EDs or great teams or great nonprofits fail because the boards don't understand, and it's not their fault always, what needs to happen. And so people get let go, people get frustrated and leave. And it's just, I don't know what the answer is to that. And maybe there needs to be some national or international governing agency that, like, because I understand that you need to have a boss, but it's just, yeah, I see so many good EDs that have suffered at the hands of boards, and it's really sad. And people that leave the industry because they just can't deal with that anymore. And I will say, as an ED, that was the most stressful job I've ever had in my life. It's a really weird job where you're stuck between your team and your board, and you have to balance that. And it's a unique place to be, and unlike anything in the for-profit world that I've ever experienced.
Been there, totally get it. Julie, what's a cheese board?
Okay, so first of all, I'm vegetarian. I will just say that working for a humane society, I made the choice at a point that I could not help animals and also eat them. So I made the choice, and there are some health issues and ecological issues as well. But I'm not the kind of person who's going to shame you for eating meat, as long as you don't shame me for not eating meat. But there are charcuterie boards. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a hard word to pronounce. But the meat and cheese boards. But I just do a cheese board. So, but yeah, it became a big thing for me last summer, 2020. I had a few friends who were safe, COVID safe, and we would meet at my house, and we would have wine, and we would have a spread of cheeses and crackers and jellies and relishes and pickled vegetables. And it's just fun. I've always been the kind of person, like, if you said the party has heavy appetizers and open bar, I am all in.
I like. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Okay.
I mean, I love them both, but I have 2 dogs, as you mentioned earlier. I have, and actually, I'm going to go into your next question. You want to answer your next question?
No. So you know what? Hold on. I'll ask the question, and then you can tell about your love of dogs.
Okay.
Who are Charlie and Millie, and what makes them so special?
So Charlie and Millie are my rescues. I adopted Charlie the year I started at the Humane Society. So he just celebrated his 11th birthday a few weeks ago. He had a sister, his littermate, who we also adopted. She passed away unexpectedly last year. It broke my heart because she was one of the most special dogs I've ever had. She really bonded with me personally. And it took me a while, but I got another girl dog in November of 2020, Millie. She's a mess, but she's fun. She's got a lot of puppy in her, and she's crazy pants, but we're working on it. But I honestly, the past year has been so hard. I know everyone, but the isolation of being alone a lot of the time, working from home, not seeing friends, not seeing family. I honestly don't know if I would have made it without my dogs. They have been a comfort to me. They have been, relief. I mean, there's a reason that dogs are therapy animals. I mean, there really is. And I think, the thing, and I've seen it happen, again, I worked at a Humane Society for almost 11 years, and I've seen it happen again and again and again and again and again. These dogs would come in that have been treated so badly, like, I mean, crazy stuff, shot, abuse, neglect, I mean, just crazy things that had happened to them. And yes, sometimes it would take them a while to trust again, but they always forgave and they always trusted. And there's some quote, and I can't remember who it's by, that said, if humans were like dogs, the world would be a better place. And that is true. Dogs give unconditional love. They forgive, they forget, they move on. And, and it's incredible. But again, I've seen it happen again and again with animals especially animals that should never forgive and never forget, who do. And it's a great thing that they can do that. And again, if humans could be more like that, the world would be a better place.
An excellent answer. Lastly, we will turn the table. You asked me one surprise question. I have no clue what it is in advance. Go ahead.
Okay, So I hope you know what the phrase "die on this hill" means. So since I've mentioned that a couple of times in this conversation, what is the one thing in the nonprofit world that you will die on the hill of? Like, you is your thing that you push and you are an advocate for, and why?
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. There are so many hills. I got Himalayas of hills. Hills to die on. I'm trying to think where I go with fundraising, marketing, email, gratitude, management. Oh Lord, you know what? I'm going to go on salaries. That's my hill.
Okay.
The low salaries. Number one, the salaries in the nonprofit sector are approximately, let's call it a quarter to a third less than the for-profit sector. The second thing is if you've got women on average are making 27% less than men in the nonprofit sector. So you've already got an imbalance when you join the sector. And if you're a woman, you've got extra, you're making way less. So right there, we'll start. The second thing is what bothers the hell out of me is the attitude that if you work for a nonprofit, you really should work for free. You don't deserve a salary. You're doing good in the world. Why would you need a salary? That's my hill. And my feeling is that salaries need to be on par so the sector can compete with the for-profit sector and bring in, I'm not saying the nonprofit sector doesn't have good people. There's a ton of good people, but we need to invite in a lot more good people. And when I say good, I mean not just good-natured, but competent, smart, experienced people who can come in and change the world or make it rain for change. And that's not just the dollars, it's the marketing, it's the communications, it's the stewardship, and it's everything around that. So as far as I'm concerned, salaries are my hill.
I 100% agree. And that sort of feeds into that whole Dan Pelota idea of scarcity thing. And he talks about that in that TED Talk. And I'm telling y'all, Dan Pelota, P-A-L-O-T-T-A, go look up his TED Talk. But yes, and I will just tell you quickly a story. I know this for a fact. The guy before me, my organization at the Humane Society I worked for had never had a female executive director, even though a female founded the organization back in 1913. I know for a fact that the man before me was making, well, I'll just say this, I don't know the percentages, so I'll say it, but he was making like $120,000 and I was making a lot less than that. When they brought me in, even though I had the same experience, actually more experience, because he had not had experience in the field of animal welfare and I did. So it is definitely a thing. And yes, absolutely, you know, people in nonprofit world, we do it for the passion. We do not do it for the money. But you were right. So the other story I will tell is you said that about don't make any money. There are people, what's frustrating too, is there are people in the nonprofit world who really buy into that. And they take it as a source of pride. Like, well, I have been volunteering for this organization for 20 years and I've never taken a penny. And
Sorry.
I mean, that sounds horrible. I'm going to be rude to say that.
No, it's not. It's everybody's put bread on the table, and I don't get that attitude. And what ends up happening is then the nonprofit says we can get everything for free. We don't have to pay for anything. And at the end of the day, that hurts. That's a whole separate podcast.
Well,
yes.
I had a board member say to me once, and let me qualify this with saying this particular board member who has a house in the Dutch Caribbean, has a 4-story house on the lake, drives a Porsche SUV. She's wealthy. She's, you know, upper middle class to lower upper class. And she looked at me in a meeting and said, I just don't, when we're talking about budget, I don't understand why the staff needs to make so much money. In the Dutch Caribbean city where we reside half the year, the Humane Society there, none of their people make money. It's all volunteer. And I was like, that's great there, but not here. You can't ask people to work for nothing. We have to have a living. You have to make a living.
I'm going to avoid a rant here and just my head and leave it at that. Yeah. Holy cow.
Oh, good answer, After. Good answer.
Julie, thank you very, very much for appearing on the podcast. You can learn more about Julie's work on her website at jedwardsconsulting.com. She's also happy to connect with nonprofit pros on LinkedIn. Julie, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast today.
Thank you for your invitation. It was great. I enjoyed it. You have a great day.
A pleasure. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.